You're a master with words. The way that you communicate is very intentional. What is your approach when it comes to trying to communicate a message and keep the potency of it?
I always want to tell myself, imagine there's non-Christians in the room at all times. Because a lot of times we speak in what I call Christianese. I'm saying one thing, but it is communicating two different things to two different audiences to where they both resonate.
I know there's kids that watch you and there's students that watch you and they want to do what you do. What is the way to actually practice or have a discipline in getting better at communicating that way?
It's secret, but I'm sharing it now for the first time. So that's the secret.
Lecrae, thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely.
Here's the thing. We talk a lot and we like to talk a lot about being intentional in the way we communicate with people. And you're a master with words. You're sitting here and I'm not trying to make you feel good about yourself, but you should, because the way that you communicate is very intentional. And so when it comes to next gen, specifically kids or students or even younger adults, we believe it's really important not to dumb stuff down. And when it comes to the way that we communicate things and we communicate well, we think that, well, if we don't dumb it down, but we distill it, like diluting and distilling are two completely different things. Jesus was really good about it. I think you've had a lot of experience in that and the way that you're a wordsmith. So what is your approach when it comes to trying to communicate a message and keep the potency of it, but also make it palatable enough so that people can understand what you're trying to say?
That's a really good question. I think over time, I've had to wrestle with what's important in terms of the audience, right? Because communication is all about, a lot of times we think of communication as what is coming out of your mouth or what you are saying or writing, but communication is a two-way street, right? Communication is as much about people understanding you as it is about you saying it. If you were to take a communications class, the goal is to teach you how to say things in a way that people can understand it. So one of the things that's been important for me is to always make sure I'm considerate of who's listening, because the audience is going to determine the language, the communication style, all those particular different things. Every audience resonates differently to particularly different things. And as a Christian, I always want to tell myself, imagine there's non-Christians in the room at all times. Because a lot of times we speak in what I call Christianese, and you just forget that there are certain terms and terminology that people, someone may be bringing a kid to church for the first time. They've never heard these terms that we just use so casually. The first time I came to a church, a woman asked me, was I saved? I was 16, and I was like, saved from what? I don't save from video. Do I coupons? Like, well, I don't know. So that's probably one thing I'm always considerate of, is like, who is the audience that I'm communicating to?
Someone I once heard say, like, it's really awesome to think outside the box. Like, it's cool to encourage people to do that, but to operate within the box is actually what you have to do. So it's like all these ideas are great, but you still have to recognize, how do we build, like, in everyone's box is different. Like, it can be your audience, your budget, your whatever, like your community, however, but you have to execute inside of it. So at different times, I think, is there an example where you've had to communicate the same message, but in different lanes and different ways, depending on your audience?
Absolutely. I think, I try to be a translator, and translation is taking concepts, words, ideas, and thoughts and communicating them into a way that the audience can receive it. And so if I've got to speak to, a group of high schoolers versus a group of, college students even, it's completely different. The terminology is completely different. A high schooler, oftentimes their attention span is functioning at a lower level than most college students. So I want to tell more stories. I want to communicate with stories. I may be telling the same message, but I'm weaving it into a story versus giving the information, right? A college student, I may be able to I'll try to connect it to something relevant in society, because they're in a place where they're idealistic and they're trying to figure out what makes sense and how do they change the world. And so how can I make this relevant for them? Same message, a different delivery, a different way of communicating it.
What is the best way for people? Like, I know there's kids that watch you and there's students that watch you and there's college students that watch you and they want to do what you do. Is there a discipline? Because I think sometimes it's really hard. Like, you see where you want to go, but you don't know how to get there. And like, it doesn't happen overnight. Everybody will say like, well, you just blew up overnight. But what is the way to actually practice or have a discipline in getting better at communicating that way?
Yeah. Well, one, I think, is asking for feedback. I think a lot of times I have a good friend and he'll always tell me, man, I had such a good talk with so-and-so. And I said, oh yeah, how did it go? He said, oh, so good. I told him this, I told him that, I told him this, I told him that. And I'm like, what did they say? And he's like, I don't know, but I know it was good but you don't know because you didn't get any feedback.
Yeah.
And so it's good practice when you're talking to somebody to say, can you just give me what you heard me say in your own words? So now you're seeing if they're tracking with you or they're misinterpreting something that you may be saying. And it's good to just practice that, just practice letting someone else hear what you're trying to say, have them regurgitate it back to you so you can see like, okay, what did I say different? And just wrestle with the back and forth until someone's like, I hear exactly what you're saying.
Have you ever had that? Like, where you were worried about, like, you thought something sounded differently in your head, and then as you got feedback or you listened back to it, you're like, that's not at all what I thought that was.
Yeah, I'm married.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, got it.
So that happens all the time. That's just a Monday. That's just a Monday at my house. But even outside of that, I've got teenagers in my house, and it's always important. A lot of times parents can think that they're telling their kids exactly what they want them to understand. But only a portion of that is really connecting and resonating. So it's always been important for me to say, hey, what did you get from this conversation? Right? What did you walk away with from this conversation? I think and I ask my kids that often, even when they're watching a sermon or we're watching a movie or whatever. What did you get from that? Because I think it's important for me to understand how they're learning and what they're learning.
Has it been over the years because you're a communicator, you are a communicator. You have different mediums and methods and platforms in which you communicate. You can preach, you will do music, you will do podcast, you will have conversations. How do you determine which method or which medium you're going or is required for you to get that message out?
Yeah. Well, I think some of that has been learned over time, right? Like actually being a student and studying how certain mediums are effective and what they're effective for. So just becoming curious, right? Like if you look at comedians, for whatever reason, a comedian can get away with saying things about society and culture that no one else can get away with. They can do a cultural critique in a way that is not as offensive. There's a comedian that says, if you get them to open their mouths wide with laughter, you can throw some truth in there.
Yeah.
And so I think for every medium, I'm thinking through how people approach it. When you pick up a newspaper to read it, you read it with a different set of lenses than you do a fiction novel. And so with each medium I'm using, I understand that people receive this information differently. With music, I can probably get away with saying some stuff that's a little tougher for people to digest because it's a good song. It sounds good. With the podcast, for me personally, I feel like I've got to be more nuanced and weave through things and think through things. When I'm on a stage preaching or communicating, there isn't an assumed authoritative role that you have because you're on this stage. So you can speak a little more authoritatively without there being, conflict. So I think it's just understanding and studying how different people use the different mediums.
That's awesome. When it comes to the way that you communicate, because I think especially in today's day and age, there's a lot of things that happen, or you can say things online and it can either be misconstrued or it can be interpreted. You've never experienced that. So, but it's really fun to sit behind a keyboard and just like comment stuff. But for a second, let's say there's like a 14-year-old that wants to do something, but they're afraid to say what needs to be said. How do you get over that? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, how do you wrestle with like, it's not going to be popular, but I know that I know that I know I have to say this?
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is if I'm talking to a 14-year-old, they need proof of concept, right? They've got to have some proof of concept in real life before they can be that confident to say that out loud and face scrutiny for it. So how firm can they stand on what it is that they're about to say? If they're going to say that, I don't know, LeBron James is the best basketball player that ever lived, um, you know, they're saying that because they've probably watched tons of footage. They're looking at his stats. They're thinking through some of that stuff. And so they're that confident to stand on what they believe. And the other thing is they've also got a chorus of other people who will support them in their views. So I think it's also important for them to know that whether online or not online, that there is a tribe of people who support them in their perspective. So I think part of it is just, man, how am I encouraging them to live out the things that they're supposed to be bold and confident in when they're communicating? How's that fleshing out in their everyday lives? And am I a good support system, and am I creating a support system for them?
That's awesome. And then when it comes to, I don't think you've ever picked a lane as far as like, this is for my Christian friends, or this is for you said you pick your audiences, but you have found a lot of success or favor, like kind of blending lanes. Like you haven't really been forced into one, like no one puts Lecrae in a corner, which is awesome. But why is that? Because you think that like people are just attracted to truth? Like what is the reason that like you feel like it's not just Christians who are like, yeah, this is, but like there are people like, yo, this guy's actually saying something that I want to listen to.
I don't know if I've ever shared this before, but I'm going to give you my formula.
Oh, let's go.
It's secret, but I'm sharing it now for the first time. It's what I call double speak. And double speak is when you're communicating one thing, but it is saying two things at the same time.
Interesting.
And so if I was to say, you have purpose, right? I think any Christian who listens to that innately understands that God gave them purpose. But a non-believer who does not have a Christian worldview would still resonate with that term. And it matters to them to hear someone articulate that they have purpose, that they're valuable. And so I'm saying one thing, but it is communicating two different things to two different audiences at the same time, to where they both resonate with it. It's a truth, but it resonates with two different audiences at the same time. And what the beautiful thing about truth is that it is oftentimes layered. I can't count how many times I've read a verse in the Bible as a 21-year-old and then come back as a 27-year-old. And it's like, oh, I never saw that. And I think that's what often happens. That's the skill set you're trying to use with people when you're saying things. And sometimes even in music, another example, even recently, I was creating a song, and I said, throw the net over the side, get a boatload. To my non-believing audience, it's a cool term that rhymed with something else that I said.
Yeah, it sounds really awesome.
Right. I got a boatload. I don't know what he got, but he got a boatload of it. And it's like,
I want that. I don't know what it is, but I want a boatload.
I want a boatload.
I want a boatload.
Yeah, it sounds good. And let's say they find the Lord, they begin maturing, that line all of a sudden becomes so much more to them. And they're like, oh. So that's the secret.
Interesting. So is that a normal approach for you? Like even as you're writing, do you think through like, is there double speak or like a double entendre in this that would hit multiple? Interesting.
The beautiful thing about communication is most of us speak through an inverted megaphone. Like we say a lot of things, but only so much of it comes out. And I think it's a skill set to turn that thing around and like be precise and get it in there, but it affects so many more people. And I think that's the skill that I'm always trying to hone in on as I'm communicating.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I have like one more question. Like we like to keep these short, but you're a fantastic communicator. And I've always said that people who are great communicators, from 0 to 100, they can communicate what they need depending on their audience. So like, I've done this thing where I just take like a random object and I ask like, hey, can you take 60 seconds and preach to me about Jesus with like whatever object. So I've got a pack of playing cards.
Okay.
And like, take a second, but like within 60 seconds, can you tell me about Jesus using a pack of cards? And like analogy, I don't know, you're a wordsmith, so do whatever you want to do.
Not put on the spot with a pack of playing cards. Okay. We are a bunch of broken individuals who, you know, we're darkened in our understanding. We need help. We need guidance. You know, similar to this, like 4 of spades. It's small, and it's dark, and there's not a lot of dynamic to it. And when you look at it like that, it seems as if, man, it's just something bland and small. However, when we come into contact with the King of Hearts, who I would call Christ, and we allow him to be the Lord in our lives, he can change our dynamic. He begins to give us life, and we go from being this bland and drab picture of just small 4, and we become dynamic. We become Jesus followers, and we begin to mirror him in some sense. We don't look exactly like him. We're not quite there, but if we trust him. But you see the dynamic that we begin to understand about ourselves and what he's done by him sacrificing himself on the cross for our broken selves. We become a dynamic looking individual whose heart and life changes. So
It was amazing. You did. Yeah, it's great. And so with like every head bowed and every eye closed, let's just take a second. And if you're watching,
and bow to the King of Hearts.
Yeah. That's great. Dude, thanks so much for being and doing this with us.
Of course. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Yeah.